Welcome to the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole, a 1-hour conversation on mental wellness to improve your look and outlook. During the show, we will talk about a variety of topics which impact you from the inside out. Each show is designed with 3 parts: lights, camera, and action. In our lights segment, we will shed light on a topic around a mental health concern. In our camera segment, we will focus on that mental health concern, educate, and raise awareness. And in our action segment, we will give 3 steps to improve your look and your outlook. So join us for the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Nicole Johnson, and I welcome you to another edition of the Headshots Podcast, improving your look and your outlook on life. Tonight's topic is a topic that is so relevant because of where we are in this day and time. We are a few short days from election, which is November the 3rd. And last night we had our final presidential debate. And so tonight's topic is around the topic of election stress. Now, some people may be saying, Dr. Nicole, I have no idea what you're talking about. What exactly is election stress? Well, in our light section tonight, we're going to shed light on what election stress is, how prevalent it actually is, and how people are impacted by election stress. And we're going to talk a little bit about, how do you know that you're becoming stressed about this upcoming election? When we think about stress, stress is the body's way to let us know that something has changed around us. Stress is not necessarily bad all the time. You can receive stress when you, let's say, have a promotion on your job. That's wonderful, but that still can be stressful. Let's say you have a new baby. While that may bring joy to your life, it can be a stressful situation. Or moving into a new home, that can be stressful as well. Just the fact that your body is reacting to the changes that have happened to it. Now, we must admit that while I've just talked about some positive ways that stress can impact you, there are some ways that you could be negatively impacted by stress. Stress may be considered pulling yourself in 2 directions at the same time. And what happens in the middle is stress. So think about times where you have, as they say, burned the candle on both ends, where you might have felt overwhelmed. You've had too many things to do and not enough time. Too many things on your plate. A lot that you've been thinking about and dealing with. That is another way that stress can impact your life. So let's talk about where we are today. Like I said, about a little over a week from the presidential election that is coming up, 2020. Some questions you may be asking yourself as you either have engaged in early voting, or you're preparing to vote, or you are just waiting for the outcome. Questions that adults are dealing with are, first of all, am I voting at all? What party am I with? Do I know enough about the candidates to even make an educated decision? What about what may happen as a result of this election? Are you worried about the impact that it'll have on your finances, your family, your friends, your safety, your life? Maybe you're one of those people who has already received threats through a mail or through a phone call. We've been hearing about that this week in the media, that some people have received threatening phone calls telling them that if they vote up in a particular direction, that somebody's going to harm them, somebody's going to hurt them, somebody's going to come and get them. All of these events that may happen can be extremely stressful to anyone who is an adult and who is able to vote in this election. You may be thinking, well, what does my vote matter anyhow? Because things are going to go on the way that they've always happened. And maybe my vote doesn't even matter, but maybe it does. And maybe you're stressed about the fact that maybe I need to encourage my family and my friends to vote. Maybe I don't see a good enough candidate, even though we have two candidates. Maybe you feel like you're in the middle, like it's the lesser of two evils. That can be a very stressful situation, meaning that your body is trying to react to all of the information that it's receiving. Whether you're watching the news, whether you're talking around the water cooler if you're in face to face work, whether it's at the end of a Zoom call, or whether it's a conversation in your family. This election is at the forefront of everyone's mind and everyone's actions. It's what we see on news every day, all day long, and it could be causing some interruption in our daily activities. So tonight I wanted to bring election stress to the forefront so that we can talk about this together. And a little later, we'll have someone else that's going to join us to talk about election stress. The American Psychological Association every single year does an annual Stress in America survey. In November in 2019, over half of the 3,600 adults that were surveyed noted stress around the 2020 election as being a major point of concern and stress in their life. Over half of the adults in this survey said, when it comes to the 2020 election, and this was last year, they were saying, I'm already stressed about it. It was a year ahead, and I'm already concerned about the results. I'm already concerned about the candidates. I'm already concerned about what is this going to mean for me and my family and the country. Maybe that's been you. Maybe you've been thinking about the election and it's causing you a lot of mental anguish. Who to vote for? Which way to turn? What is this election going to mean? What's going to happen the day after, the week after, or months after the votes are counted? And so in the study, it showed that these adults were concerned about the election 365, almost 365 days ago. And so we know that the longer that stress is present in a person's life, the more damage it can do, not only on them mentally, emotionally, but also physically. And so we have to take into consideration that stress about the election doesn't just start a week before the election or when the debates begin. Some people have been stressed about 2020 since 2016, which means that they have lived in 4 years of continual stress around the election. And so, if these 3,600 people are representational of what you and I are experiencing, then we have been under some serious stress around who's going to win the election and what it will mean for our country for almost 4 years now. When our bodies are under stress, we will see an increase of a chemical called cortisol. And in these studies that I've read, I was reading up on it because it just fascinated me about election stress. It found that before the stress, which before the election, which is pre-election stress, there was heightened cortisol levels, which means it prohibited people from being able to go to sleep at night. And then the study also showed that there was post-election stress, meaning the day of the election and afterwards, people experience the same type of interruption of stress depending on which candidate they picked and who won. But even the studies have shown and research has shown that months after the election, people are still reporting stress. And so I wanted to take time to sit and to speak with you tonight about how would you know that you may be experiencing election stress. First of all, take a moment and think about what you've been watching on TV and how are your conversations in relationship to this election. Have you found yourself becoming more aggressive, more argumentative, not wanting to really engage people around the topic of the election? Maybe you've experienced some headaches every time you think about voting or think about the election. Maybe you've kind of frozen a little bit. Maybe you have not even decided to get a mail in ballot and you really haven't even thought about are you going to go in person and how you're going to vote. You just feel a little frozen, like I don't know what to do. Maybe you have lost your appetite and you're feeling nauseous. You're feeling like your stomachs are in knots. All of these could be symptoms related to election stress. The research has shown that people that have reported higher anxiety and stress around elections time have also reported interruption in sleep, interruption in their relationships, not really wanting to engage in the things that they love, finding themselves argue, finding relationships with family and friends, whether they're on the same side of the political argument or on the opposite side. They've been finding it difficult to hold conversations. Some of you may feel responsible, like, if I don't vote, is that going to be the tipping point that turns the election one way or the other? People have been reporting feeling more feelings of oppression, like this election is going to cause me to feel more discriminated against, more oppressed. My financial situation is not going to better. All of these things can mean that you may possibly be dealing with election stress. Some people said, Nicole, I've talked to people and they said, Nicole, I'm just tired. I'm tired of talking about it. I almost feel like, what's the use? Somebody's going to win. And regardless to who wins, I really don't believe that things are going to change. This level of disconnection and really feeling hopeless around the election can be a sign that you are experiencing election stress. Some people are drained. They are very tired. It seems like the whole idea of even watching debates, even trying to ascertain the actual plans of the candidates has been grueling. A couple of weeks ago, and even last night, when I scrolled through Facebook and looked at the live stream and looked at people, what they were saying, people were talking about, oh my goodness, I'm so tired of the same old thing. All of these pressures around the election can be leading to election stress. In our world, we don't like to talk about stress because we feel like, oh, stress is normal. There's going to be stress, and stress is common. But going under the election stress that we are experiencing right now, it is coupled with fear. Fear that if I go to the polls, if I vote a particular way, am I going to be identified? Is someone going to know who I voted for? And then will I be ostracized or will I be targeted because of my vote? So, in addition to the stress of the decision, because every time we have a decision to make, there is a level of stress that comes into decision making. We're worried and we're concerned about making the right choice. But the stress that the Americans are under today is far more than just, am I making the right choice? The stress that Americans are under today is, am I making the right choice? And what will happen to my family? What will happen to my life? What will happen to me after the election is over? And so this topic of election stress is very important for us to unpack today. We want to shed some light on election stress. And we want to say to you, if this is how you're feeling, you want to stay tuned, because we're going to talk about it a little bit more, and we're going to give you some steps to take to relieve yourself from the election stress that you might be feeling. Now, I've already talked about the fact that election stress it can be felt by many people. No one is outside of the realm of feeling the stress. But I want to bring special attention to young adults. Young adults, and if you watch the Black Lives Matter movement, if you've watched the protests, you have seen a shift in who's in the forefront of the political arena these days. We are seeing young adults at the forefront. We're seeing young people across the cameras, across the news outlets, taking this opportunity to be at the forefront of change. But even being at the forefront of change is stressful. How is election stress especially problematic for young adults? Stress is linked to heart disease, anxiety, depression, substance use disorder, and behavioral problems in young adults. And so, as we are going into this election and we are seeing our young people rising up and taking charge of their lives and the future of this country, we have to be concerned about election stress for young adults. There was a study done by the Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Mental Health Journal, and they reported that young adults are the group that feels most helpless when it comes to election stress. They feel helpless and they feel hopeless, and a lot of them are unable to cope with the anxiety and the fear associated with election stress. And so, if you are a young adult today and you are finding yourself a little bit more anxious, a little bit more worried, I want you to know that you're not alone. Young adults have reported feeling more emotionally impacted by election stress, by the whole idea of voting. And even if they're voting for the first time, the way that this election is going, having to do a mail-in ballot or having to stand in astronomically long lines, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, just being totally confused. For our young adults, this issue has caused a lot of fear and anxiety. Stress, anxiety, and fear was found in studies to be most present before the election, as like I said before, in this pre-election season. And so how do we support our young people? How do we support first-time voters as they are going through the pressures of making this decision? You may have children that are voting for the first time. You may have family members, your nieces, nephews, sisters, brothers, that are voting for the first time. And they may not be talking about the anxiety that they're feeling. They may not be voicing how afraid they are. They may not be talking about the fact that they don't know who to pick. And they feel ashamed because they don't want to talk about not really knowing who's the right person. Or maybe you're in a family that strongly aligns with one party or the other. But you have a young adult in your family that does not align with their family. And they're feeling isolated. They're feeling like I can't really connect with my family because my family believes one thing and I believe another. How can I possibly tell them that I don't agree with them? How can I possibly let them know that I feel different. Young adults are suffering across America with stress from the election. But when young adults experience anxiety and when they experience fear and when they experience stress, a lot of times they are quiet. And so if you're connected to a young adult, check in with that young adult. Find out how they are doing. Ask them, how do you feel about the election? What's going through your mind? Even young adults have reported that they are having a hard time concentrating on their education, on their schoolwork, because they're thinking about the election. So I've already talked about adults, and we know that adults are struggling with the election and the impact. But think about our college students. Think about the young adults. Think about the fresh out of high school students that are voting for the first time. And in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of racial injustices, in the midst of all of the things that are going on, the additional stress of having to make a decision that might impact the whole nation is upon them. And so we want to really focus in, and let's bring the camera in on young adults. Let's focus in on how we can position ourselves as advocates for one another during this most important time. You may be saying, Dr. Nicole, this topic just sounds so weird. Why are we talking about election stress? We're talking about it because people are under stress and don't realize it. You think that the pains in your body, you think that the sleepless nights are just because the seasons are changing. But some of your sleepless nights are because of election stress. It's because of the thoughts that are on your mind as you have made or are going to make this decision. It's the things that you're watching on television. It's the responsibility that you feel, not only from yourself or from inside yourself, but also from others around you. I know I grew up in a home where it was a shame in my home not to vote. And some of you are feeling that stress and that pressure. And yes, there is extra stress on first time voters. They're being told that it's because of you, we're either going to win this election or lose this election. And while it has something to do, voters coming out has something to do with the turnout of the election, of course. But just those words being repeated over and over again is adding additional stress to those that are impacted in this time. So let's say you're a first time voter, and you don't have to be a young adult to be a first time voter. You could be someone who just never voted before. And now you're feeling like it is important to vote in this election. But I'm feeling, Dr. Nicole, I'm feeling stressed out about it. I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling anxiety. I don't know where to turn. Well, I want you to understand that you're not alone, that there is hope, and that there is help today to be able to deal with all of the feelings of election stress that you might feel. So, Dr. Nicole, why do people, congregate and talk about an area and a topic that is just so stressful? If it's so stressful, why are people just rolling it over and over again? Because people need an outlet. Family and friends are looking for an outlet. People are looking for a safe place to process what they're watching on TV, to talk about what they think about each candidate, what they think about our nation, what they think about the world that they live in. And a lot of times we are forced to have these conversations in environments that are not safe. We are having conversations with people that are not open to hear. We're having conversations with the wrong people, and it's causing that unnecessary stress. And so tonight, I want to give you help. I want to give you what you need in order to survive this election as we are preparing for it. Now, you may have already cast your ballot, and you may say, Dr. Nicole, I've already done and fulfilled my responsibility. But in spite of you fulfilling your responsibility, research has let us know that even after people have cast their vote, they still are having sleepless nights. They still are having feelings of shame and guilt if their candidate doesn't win. They still are having feelings of fear of what is it going to be like tomorrow. And they're still having concerns that are impacting their body and their ability to eat because there is a mind gut connection, their ability to enjoy their days because they're so worried. And when you go on social media and you're seeing ads and you're seeing ad after ad and you're seeing comment after comment, we are overloaded and overwhelmed with the election. And it is causing a lot of stress. So tonight you may say, Dr. Nicole, what can I do? How can I help? What are the ways I can come and get some help for election stress? What can I do, Dr. Nicole? Because I can't avoid the television. I can't cut my TV off all day, but I still need some information. I'm wondering if there's anyone out there who is honestly saying, yes, Dr. Nicole, I have been stressed. Just put it in the comments. This election has caused me to think. This election has caused me to be worried. I'm worried about health care. I'm worried about my finances. I'm worried about employment. I'm worried about, am I going to be able to maintain my home, my family? I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Let us know. We're all here together. And that's the important thing I want to share with you is that you're not alone. You're not alone with the thoughts. You're not alone with what's going on. We are here for you. And that even though election stress is happening around you, there are other people that is feeling the same thing that you're feeling. Are you sleeping tonight? Are you thinking about the election? Well, let's talk about this a little bit more. So I want to give you some action steps. I want to give you some ideas about what can you do, Dr. Nicole, what can I do? I do admit that I have election stress. I'm going to stand up and say it. Dr. Nicole, this election has me stressed out. I've been thinking about it. I've been arguing with my family about it. It's the topic of the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner table. Even when I connect with family and friends, it's on everybody's mind. Even if I go to church, maybe it's the topic at church, the election. And the reason why I understand, Dr. Nicole, it's so important, okay? And yes, Marlene is thinking about Medicare, and senior citizens are thinking about, is my health care going to be taken away? And it can cause a lot of fear in our time. And so I'm a witness that I think about the changes that have happened because of the pandemic and people getting payments, the stimulus pay. And is there going to be more money? Is there going to be more things for us to be able to survive? How are people going to make it tomorrow? And this can cause levels of depression to come, levels of worry and fear. This can cause people to really be concerned about their life. And so we want to continue the conversation. We want to keep the conversation going. We want to have a conversation even the more about this thing about election stress. And I thank you for tuning in tonight. And I thank you for everybody who may be in the replay, because election stress will be with us for some time. We're going to be talking about it because we haven't yet reached the decision. And when the decision comes, there'll be another type of feeling that people may have: remorse, sadness, depression again. And so we want to keep the conversation going. So we want to thank you tonight for just being here. And we have actually invited a guest to be with us tonight. And I'm so happy to have this guest. This is a young adult who I will talk to about, to get some insight beyond Nicole, because Nicole can tell you, Nicole can talk to you, Nicole can share what Nicole is experiencing. But it's always good to hear from someone else the things that they may be going through as we are bringing forth this topic of election stress. So I am glad to have um, Camille Knight, who is one of my godchildren, but also beyond that, she is a wonderful person who has a lot to say about a lot of things going on in this world. And so, Camille, are you
I,
there?
I'm here. I'm sorry I don't have my picture up. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. So
Okay.
glad to have you on, Camille.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay. So, Camille, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the fear, the anxiety, and the stress around the election. So, tell me a little bit about what you've been experiencing as we are preparing for this election.
Um, it's been like you said, it's been a lot of fear, anxiety, stress. Um, I've been trying to stay as informed as I can because I think that's the key to making any decision, no matter what decision you make in this election. The best way to make that decision is to be informed. And I think the best way to be informed, especially in a day and age like today, where there is so much information that we have at our fingertips, and there's so much, is to look at a lot of different information. You know what I mean? Don't always get your, I mean, obviously you have specific sources that you go to and that you trust, but try to look in other places that you wouldn't normally look. Just to, be able to kind of rightly divide, if you will, and kind of just see what may not be true or not. But it has been a stressful time, and especially we're coming up, not too long. We're coming up, but just trying to be prepared and trying to be educated, no matter what decision I make.
Right. And Camille, thanks for that. And so, even with that education, even with that knowledge, do you ever feel overloaded with information?
Definitely, especially when you wake up and you have 10 different articles telling you 10 different things that happened while you were asleep, or you go to work and you have people going, "Did you hear this? Did you hear this?" And everyone's opinion, you always feel overwhelmed. So I think it's good to take steps back, take, a couple steps back, and regroup, and maybe for a couple days or a day or two, don't check the news the first thing in the
Mhm.
morning. You know what I mean? Like, give it a break. But so yes, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed, especially sometimes when you, as people of color, as women, when you feel like sometimes your voice isn't being heard as much, it is very
Mhm.
difficult and very frustrating. But you gotta keep trucking on, I guess.
Right. And I see a comment from Michelle, and she talks about, the phone calls, the mail, the TV advertisement. Like, you can't even watch your own favorite show without
hmm
being inundated with information about the election.
Social media, they have advertisements all over social media. If you just want to scroll and see what your friends are doing, you're getting, someone's face telling you what to vote. So yeah, it's all, they want us to know. They want us to vote. Who they want us to vote for might be different, but they want us to be out there. So
So let me ask you, as a young person, a young adult. I talked a little bit earlier about the fact that young adults were at the forefront of the protests recently, and young adults are seemingly at the forefront of voting. And so, do you feel as a young adult additional pressure to get out there to get the vote? Do you feel like this election is hanging on young adults especially?
Yeah, I think we saw that in the last election too, that young adults really came out in numbers that weren't expected and really made a difference in the polls. And I think it is a pressure on all of us in general, but young adults, because we are gonna we have a lot more voting to do, and it's
Hmm.
important that we
Hmm.
make those decisions now. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
if the people who get elected now are gonna affect us way longer than anyone else. You know what I mean?
Wow. Hmm.
Except the ones behind us who can't vote, but we're going to be affected the most out of these decisions. So why would we not want to have a say? Why would we not want to, especially when we're electing people, because we talk a lot about the presidential election, but
Yes.
there are so many other elections going on. It's not just the president. That's a 4-year term, 4 to 8 year term. But there are so many other people who we're supposed to be voting for now who are lifelong appointments. So why would we not want to be educated and have a hand in someone who's going to have a hand ultimately in potentially how my life is ran for the rest of my life? You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think it is very important that, and like I said, we saw it. We saw like the rejuvenation in the younger generations to get out and vote and to like push for the vote. And I
Mhm.
think that's definitely a great thing that we've seen that.
So thank you for, sharing that. But now talk to me about the pressure. Talk to me about the impact of the pressure. Have you had sleepless nights? Have you had thoughts, worry, fears in yourself and your friends? Are you seeing that as a running theme with so much pressure on you all?
I think we are afraid of the outcome of this election, especially because I think last one, everyone kind of was like, it'll never happen. Like, everyone had, they already had what they thought was going to happen. And for a lot of people, it was definitely a wake up call and a shake up. And so I think people and younger generations are worried. I think a lot of
Hmm.
people are worried about what this election will say about our country,
Yes.
um, and how it will set us up in the world platform.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I'm not, endorsing or saying anything about one candidate or another, but it's, the saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
now I feel like this is really a turning point of, okay, this election is kind of going to show the world platform and us as a nation who we really are.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I think that scares people. And it can be, again, it can be stressful to decide to figure out if you're doing the right thing when you vote.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I've heard a lot. I've heard that a lot from people who they voted for this person or they voted for the other person, and then later they just was like, well, because I feel like another issue with this election is a lot of people feel like it's the lesser of two evils. And
Yes.
I
I've
think
heard
when
that.
it's, yeah, and I feel like when it's that decision, and when it's not just a clear cut decision, that
Hmm.
is very stressful, because you're like, well, I mean, I don't want this one, but I mean, this one isn't that much better. So am I better if I really vote for them, even though I don't support them completely? And so it is stressful. And it's kind of like people figuring it's kind of people figuring out their morals and their litmus test
Uh,
of where they are. You know what I
yes.
mean? Like, what is really important to them?
Hmm.
Okay, I support this person, but they said this. Is that not important to me, or is this more important to me than that? You know what I mean? So it's people kind of refiguring out their morals and where they are, and their family's morals, and figuring out that their family might not be who they thought they were. So
Wow.
it's,
Camille. Yes. Go ahead.
it's just, it's definitely frustrating, and it and
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
and it's um scary to some people, and
Hmm.
it's it's a burden to others. So yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
So, do you think that, with all of that, youth are being encouraged to vote, and everything that you said was so powerful? Even the fact that when someone goes to vote, it really is them bearing out who they are, who their morals are, and even that really is can be emotionally and mentally grueling. It could be
Hmm.
very tiring to recognize I like this person, but no one else likes this person, or I
Exactly.
like that person, but people think that their person this person is not good, or they don't
Hmm.
have a good platform. Do you think that election stress will negatively impact voter turnout for young adults and adults in general?
You mean in terms of people coming out to vote?
Yeah, because there's so much stress and so much pressure around making the decision. Do you think that may cause people to say
you
disconnect
know
and say, I'm not making the decision at all?
Honestly, I think we saw that a lot. I keep referring back to last election, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
very important just to see the comparison, because I don't think this election is that much different if you really look at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, but we saw that a lot with last election. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
we had a heavy turnout of people just not going to the polls at all. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And I think it was like the highest it's been in like so many votes. I don't know the exact amount,
Right.
but it's been like it was like the highest in like a lot of
Right.
voting terms. And we saw that then. But I think because of us seeing that then,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are like, I can't do that again.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm sure it will deter some
Wow.
people still,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a
Yes.
lot of people saw what that did. You
Yes.
know, a lot of people just couldn't make that decision or didn't feel right making that decision, and so they didn't make any decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a lot of people saw what that did, and now they're like, well, I have to do something. I have to make a decision one way or another.
Wow.
And I will
Yeah.
say, you've seen a lot of people, and I think it kind of speaks to that. You've seen a lot of people flip now. You know what I mean? You've seen a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Republicans go, I'm voting Democrat, or a lot of Democrats go, I'm voting Republicans, or I have a lot of friends who are like Green Party, or who are independent and they don't align with any other. And so last election they either voted Green Party even though they
Mm-hmm.
knew it was no chance. They just voted off of morals. And now this
Mm-hmm.
election they're like, absolutely not. I have to make a decision because we have to lend our voices to one way or another. So I
Mm-hmm.
think some people will still be deterred, yes, but I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people have learned from the last election. So I think you
Right.
will see, and it's interesting because a lot of people have already voted.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of people have
Yes.
already voted.
Yes.
I think the turnout will be there. What it will turn out to be is another
Remains to be
issue.
seen.
Yes,
Right. Right.
but I
So
think the turnout will be there.
I think that, one of the things you're bringing up is the fact that, one of the things I said earlier was the fact that election stress does not just happen before. The
Oh
American
no.
Psychological Association study was done in 2019, and people were already talking about the 2020 election. But
Mm-hmm.
researchers are even shown that the day of the election and even months after the election, there is a lot of stress. And so let me ask you, what have you seen, or have you seen differences in your friends due to politics and the election? Has it impacted your friendships, your close relationships?
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I've. Some people have been cut off. Some people have not. Some people we
Well,
have weathered the storm. I really think that this election and the last one, like I was saying before, it really made people look in themselves and kind of
hmm
judge themselves morally and ethically.
hmm
And a lot of this, especially not because these elections are not. These elections are based on so many other things. You know what I mean?
yes,
They're especially the last couple ones, because a lot of people were, we were not just judging about policy in a lot of ways. We were judging about racism and sexism, and we were
hmm
talking about things that we haven't talked about for centuries, for decades. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that really are affecting us. And I think that's where that's why it was so pivotal in terms of friendships and families,
hmm
because it
hmm
wasn't just were you a Democrat or Republican. It was, did you support women? Did you support people of color? Did you support the church? Do you support any religion? Do you even
yes,
like with LGBTQ rights coming up, it was issues that were, these are foundational issues. Who do you
hmm
support? Who are you with? Who are you not?
hmm
Oh, and even if you say I don't support that, oh, but you're okay with supporting someone who does support that. That was the issue. So
yeah,
yeah, I've had to walk away from some friendships. I'm sure some
wow,
friendships have walked away from me. Um,
yeah,
and but this was also the time where me personally, I had to be okay with that. You know what I
mm,
mean? I I
yeah,
I couldn't, you know, especially as a Christian, I feel like we feel like when people walk away, it's like some strife or animosity, or that's not Christian. Like, but I have no animosity for those people. I wish them the best. I love them with the love of Christ, but I understand for my well being and for probably theirs, we have to go our separate ways. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And a lot of people you hear like, oh, you don't let politics tear you apart, and it's not. Again, it's not just are you red, are you blue. You know what I mean? These are coming down to moral, ethical issues, and even if you want to say biblical issues. So a lot of these issues are biblical issues.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I think that's not what we're talking about. I feel like when we talk about the election in biblical or Christian or terms, we talk about two issues. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? We talk
Hmm.
about LGBTQ rights, and we talk about abortion. We don't talk about what the Bible says about foreign policy. We don't talk about what the Bible says about immigration. We don't talk
Hmm.
about any of those things. We talk about those two things, but that is very, what the Bible says about how to treat your neighbor, what the Bible
Right.
says about how to interact with each other, what the Bible says about economics. We don't
Right.
talk about
Right.
it. But
Right.
those are all, if you are a Christian and that's your worldview, that should inform all of what you see in politics. We shouldn't. So I think
Mhm.
that's, again, it was just the idea of figuring out
Wow, that's powerful.
what relationships were pivotal to hold on to, and which ones I had to let go with the love of Christ. I had to let them go with the love of Christ.
So, Camille, what you're saying is that you, as a human being, whoever you are, this decision, this election stress has impacted you in your emotional connections with people, in your psychological connections with people, and really has transformed your relationships, not only with family, but also with friends and with other people because of who you are as a human being, your personality, the things
Hmm.
that are important to you, which can be emotionally stressful and
Hmm.
very psychologically stressful when people walk away. Even though, like you
Definitely.
said, there may be a point in time where you have to accept the fact that people have walked away. This election and these political times are causing rifts where there
Yeah,
might not have been rifts before. It's causing tears in friendships, and that's adding to the stress of the election. That people
definitely.
are realizing when I have to make this choice, it may be I lose
Hmm.
people who are close to me,
Yeah.
and that's why there's a level of hopelessness and
Yeah.
depression and fear because this
And
decision
anxiety,
and
just the
anxiety. Yes.
anxiety of just going to work and knowing that someone might mention the debate the night before, you know what I mean,
Right.
and you might not agree with their standpoint. That's
Right.
anxiety, the
Yes.
feeling of like, the feeling of anxiety of going online and seeing one of your friends say something that is not right or you don't agree with, and now you
Hmm.
feel like you have to weigh, should I say something to them, should I just
Wow.
ignore it,
Yes.
and then that's a moral, that's a morality thing in yourself. You know what I mean? The feeling of, just the feeling of not like thinking someone and then finding out you don't.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
can play on your trust and
Mhm.
how you value and see other people. You mean? So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely psychologically, it's a lot of things that hits onto, and like you said, depression, because sometimes you get this worldview of, okay, if I'm seeing this and this and that I don't agree with on my timeline, does it mean that the majority believes that? Does this mean that our world is messed up? Does it mean
Mhm.
it's not savable? And that can play into depression. Does that mean that we're hopeless? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's definitely just a gamut of emotions that you can go through on a daily and just back to back sometimes.
Thanks, Camille. I mean, I really appreciate bringing that point to light because yes, the fact that all these things around the election is really bearing out people and relationships. And you're absolutely right. You can go to work and you can feel that should I speak up? Should I not speak up? Is my job at risk? How am I going to deal with the stress of who I choose? And what happens like if the conversation comes up on my job or
Hmm.
I know they say we should things we shouldn't talk about is religion and politics, but if for some reason it always comes up on the job. And
Hmm.
even as an educator, even as an assistant professor, it comes up in the classrooms on the college
Hmm.
campus. And we have to remember that even in college campuses, that students are dealing with this every day. Do I speak up in my class? Maybe I'm a political science major. Do I have the freedom to speak up? And is this going to even impact my education? And so, what you're talking about is such a valuable topic, and points that you're making is so valuable that the election stress, while it starts with making the decision, it has everything to do with everything around this decision that we have to make. And so, Camille, I know you have to run, and I appreciate you being here.
No
But before
problem.
you go, is there any last words that you would give to any young person, any young adult that's eligible to vote, what would you say to them
Vote.
about the stress and about the anxiety, about the risk? What
Uh,
would you say to them?
well, number one, I would say vote.
Okay.
Just vote. But like I said, I'm the type of person who I used to get up every day and I used to look at the news. First thing I did was look at the news on my phone, and I
Hmm.
had to stop that because it does increase your anxiety. I know now I take social media breaks for like all of June this year. I did not go into any form of social media. I went on every once in a while to post one thing if I felt like something came. But I take social media breaks,
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
just to because social media can add to anxiety. I know it does for me. It heightens your anxiety, and you're constantly looking at people and what other people's opinions are, and
Yes.
so. But I would also say be informed. Do your own research. Don't only go off of what you're hearing, what your friend is saying. Don't. I mean, um, be able to realize what matters and what doesn't matter.
Hmm.
I think it's a very important point because we get a lot of information, but some of it just doesn't matter. Me personally, some people might think differently, but me personally, I don't think it. I don't care what this celebrity says, who this celebrity says they're voting for. That does
Right.
not matter to me,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, their vote is not going to count as my vote. So
Right.
I have to be informed, and they're voting on two totally different things. We're in two totally different places in our lives. Okay,
Yes.
I'm not in
Yeah.
the same place as Kim Kardashian and P Diddy.
Yeah.
Wish I
Right.
were, but I'm not. So I
Hmm.
can't vote with their information. I can't vote from their worldview. I can't vote with them. I have to make my own decisions. I have to get my own information. And like I said, it's fine to have your favorite point of information that you get, but I would encourage everyone to look at different sources. Fact check. Please fact check when you put before you post something, before you agree. Fact check. See what it's really saying. See what really happened. Yeah, and take it one day at a time. We're coming up to
Yes.
it, and there will be, there will be feelings even after we vote.
Yes.
But take it one day at a time, and give yourself grace, and
Well,
give those around you grace.
that I agree with that, Camille. I absolutely agree with that. Great for yourself and your person. Give everybody a break
Yeah,
because everybody is under the same stress, trying to figure
exactly.
out what decision is right. So thank you so much, Camille. I know you have to run. I thank you for just being with us, but tonight, and we appreciate you for
No
coming
problem.
on. All
Thank you
right,
for having me.
thank you so much. Love you. We'll have you back because you're a good speaker and good
Okay.
insight about this topic. Take care.
Bye bye.
And so Camille really started highlighting the action that I want to give you tonight. So you may be saying, Dr. Nicole, I heard what Camille was saying about the impact of this election on friendships, just the decision itself. And like she said, it can impact a young adult's life for the long haul, and can impact everyone around them. And we've had so many people talk about Medicare. There's so many things that can go on around this election that we have to keep in mind. And so here are my 3 R's tonight. I have 3 R's for your action tonight. The first R is remember. Remember that you are only one person making a vote. You're one vote out of many. And while your one vote is not going to decide the election, your one vote is your own. So remember that. You do not have to bear the responsibility of everybody voting. You just need to bear the responsibility of yourself. So that's the first R. Remember, you are one person. And this election, while it needs your vote, it is not hung up only on your vote. So that's the first R. Remember, okay? The next R I want to give you is to reduce. Camille said it, and I agree, and I said it earlier. Reduce the amount of time that you spend looking at media, looking at social media, looking at things around the election. If you're feeling stressed, you're not sleeping, your thoughts are racing about this election, you're feeling the pressure of who to vote for, then I encourage you to reduce the amount of time that you are spending your mind thinking about the election, engaging in conversation about the election. reduce the stress. If you've already voted, then step away for a little bit because your vote is cast. If you have yet to vote, then spend some time away from others so that you can make this important decision on your own. Camille gave some good advice about searching and finding out your own information and using that information to make your decision. So the first R is remember. Remember, you're only one vote out of many. The second R is to reduce the amount of time that you spend watching the news, talking to other people, and thinking about this election. And the number three is probably the most important thing. And I will tell anyone who is feeling that stress, if you're disconnected, if you're having trouble sleeping, if you're feeling aggressive, you're feeling angry, helpless and hopeless around what might happen after this election, I want you to recharge. I want you to find a way to take care of yourself. You need self-care. You need an emotional break because believe it or not, this election and the choice and the ideas and the thoughts surrounding this election has been and will be stressful. So remember the three E's. Remember that you're only one vote out of many. The three R's, sorry. Remember you're one vote out of many. Remember to reduce the amount of time that you spend talking or engaging in activity around this election. And take some time to take care of yourself. Recharge. Go on a walk. If the conversation gets too aggressive around the election, remove yourself, excuse yourself. If you're watching TV and you're just overwhelmed with all of the news and all of the different things that's going on, step away from the TV. Turn on some other enjoyable show. Take time to take care of you. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank Camille Knight for joining me to talk about election stress. If you're here and you've watched this video and it has been an encouragement to you, if it has spoken to what you're experiencing, let us know. Let us know. We really appreciate you joining us. We're going to be continuing this topic next week about election stress, and we're going to give you some points to talk about what should you do when the decision is made. Studies have shown that people experience a lot of depression after the vote has been cast, after the vote has been counted. And so we're going to continue this topic of election stress, and we're going to talk about what will you do when you find out who's won? How will you deal? How will you emotionally respond? We want to identify election stress, and now we want to talk about it, about what happens after the election, because I want to prepare you. We have a couple of weeks left. We can get our minds ready. Remember, Headshots is about your look and your outlook. And we can prepare so that you don't have to go through this post-election season hopeless, helpless, and depressed and anxious. We can prepare our mind now. We can strengthen each other right now for what is ahead and what is to come. So I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope that you'll be with me on the next edition of Headshots. This is Dr. Nicole. Thank you much for being with me, and have a good evening.